one banner only, and that's NBA titles.
The Lakers are the world champions. The Lakers have won it again.
What's up, everyone? We are live. Welcome to another episode of Rings and Things, the home where banners aren't optional, they are tradition. I'm welcoming a special guest today. I got Es Baraheni, host of the NBA Daily Show with The Athletic, Raptors Republic, a basketball connoisseur. He does everything basketball, and someone that I have been following for a while, and I really appreciate his measured takes and his basketball analysis and overall just love for the game of basketball. So, welcome to Rings and Things. I'm so happy that you were able to join us today.
Dude, appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure to talk with you. I'm excited to talk Lakers because you don't know this, but Raptors folks will know this. They were my childhood team before I really got introduced to the Raptors. So like the Lakers and Kobe Bryant and all that, that was sort of my childhood before I even knew what the Raptors were. So it was it's cool to be able to come here and talk about it from, yes, an objective perspective, but also a team I still follow pretty closely just because, like you said, banners are not optional, you know? So, yeah.
Well, I'm so happy that you're here, and that's what we want to talk about. We want that objective analysis, that perspective that you bring to the table. So let's start off the bat, right? Let's talk about Luka's transformation. The Lakers, they had a successful year, all things considered, in the regular season, finished off with 50 wins, ended up as the third seed. And with all the things that changed, you know, from AD getting traded in the middle of the season, and then the lineups keep changing with injuries happening to LeBron at times, they had a pretty good season, but it was a little disappointing for them to get eliminated in that first round. And there were a lot of question marks definitely coming out of LA. Like, what is the offseason going to look like? Pelinka has a tough job ahead of him. Does Luka even want to extend and stay? That was a big question that was hitting the timeline. I, for one, wasn't that concerned. You know, Luka obviously was shocked. It's like that's a big deal to just get like uprooted. Like, I don't know if you remember, there was a report where like he was about to close on a home. Like that's craziness. That's like, you're thinking about future. And we were just talking about on the pre-show, like about like growing our families and building our families. So, like, he was probably in that headspace as well. And now you're uprooted and
you're off to LA. Yeah.
You're off to LA. So the Lakers have had an interesting offseason. They were able to sign DeAndre Ayton, fits a sizable gap at a whole in terms of Jackson Hayes as their starting big last year, Jake LaRavia, and Marcus Smart. So talk me through, Luka's transformation, him taking cardio and health very seriously, as well as his diet, and then the pieces that are coming into with the Lake Show.
Yeah, it's funny reading that article. I was like, "Damn, me and Luka are on the same wave. We're doing intermittent fasting. We don't eat until we do our workout in the morning, and we try to relatively not eat late. Past 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. You're not eating. So I know exactly the vibe that Luka Dončić is on. Although I don't have chefs to prepare my meals, and dudes poking and prodding.
Would be nice, right?
It would be nice. It would be nice to have the best of the best. But look, that's what Luka Dončić was on. And honestly, like when that trade went down, that shocked the world, shocked everybody. The one thing that like you knew was going to happen was you were going to see a pissed off version of Luka Dončić. And that is what you're probably going to see next season. And I think this body transformation is a part of that. It's him kind of, it was a wake-up call probably in a good way for him to have this trade. They probably got a chance to, maybe the Mavericks helped him in a little way to be able to extend his career just by making him so angry, making him so motivated, because clearly he's like, I'm not going to say that he's wildly different athletically now or anything like that. We got to see the proof of concept on the floor. And also, truthfully, you have to see how long it sustains, right? When you see the kind of the long wildness of an 82-game season, the grog, if you will, how can Luka Dončić's body sustain through that now with the weight loss? I think that's like a new element to consider. But generally, Lakers fans should be really excited for a guy who is motivated, who's like trying to be as sharp as possible with his game. Really curious to see how the losing weight impacts how physical he is, because he's such a physical player, and that generally is something that I'm curious about. But also, if you go and watch like Luka Dončić highlights in the bubble and Luka Dončić highlights like in his rookie year, this is a guy who's exploding to the basket, dunking, getting to the hole, and like that's an aspect we haven't seen too much of. He's more of a methodical type of player over the last couple of years. So I'm curious if he'll get some of that athleticism and pop back, and that will add a different layer to his game offensively.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think you hit such a good point. Like, one thing that was missing, and this is probably something that you talk about, like covering the Raptors, is just that rim pressure. Like, that was something that was non-existent with him in his really short like stint with the Lakers. Is that it was a lot of herky jerky and trying to like manufacture like either not possessions, but like calls, or just take some like really tough shots. And he's such a good player that he hits on a lot of those. But like I'm excited to see that rim pressure, and then also be able to kind of have DeAndre Ayton. Like, now you have a like legitimate pick and roll, pick and pop type big that I think will just not only elevate his game, but then also the players around him. And I'm really excited to see that rim pressure, because I think that's what really matters. I guess one part of it in the playoffs, and that was also missing in that Minnesota Timberwolves that playoff matchup where there was no one kind of getting to the rim, and Minnesota was just eating up the Lakers, like just super super physical. So to be able to have some of that pop would be really really excited to see.
Yeah, the mini was just a terrible matchup for you guys, just because of the size that they had, and when they were willing to go small, like Julius Randle was, he just had like an incredible series versus you guys. So like credit to them for just playing really good basketball and matching up well with what you guys had. Truthfully, you could tell that when the Lakers were heading into the playoffs, it was like, hey, let's see if this proof of concept works. Let's see if this blueprint makes sense. And I think they realized they were too small. I think, as you can notice around the NBA, the trend is to get bigger.
Yeah.
And I honestly, the Lakers did get bigger, even despite Marcus Smart being like a smaller guard, he positionally plays bigger. He's actually probably better switching out onto bigger players and guarding 3s and 4s versus 2s and 1s now. He's lost a little bit of that mobility because of his age, but I think he can be feisty and strong, and that'll help him guard up in positions. And so they've gotten bigger through Marcus Smart. Jake LaRavia, I'm really high on as a defender, and like he's good positionally. And of course, DeAndre Ayton is like the biggest question mark defensively, because everybody will bring up that Suns run to the finals. He was a huge catalyst as a rim protector, as a guy who was protecting the paint. He was incredible. I think of like that block shot that he had. I believe it was against the Bucks. Could have been in the conference finals, but he had so many moments where he just was such a deterrent at the basket. He can bring that element to his game again in Los Angeles. I believe that that's something that he can do. To your point about the offensive side, a lot of people will bring up the free throw attempts. He attempted like 1.5, 2 free throws over the last couple seasons in Portland. I'm very curious to see how aggressive he looks. That being said, he's never played with a player that's about to spoon feed him as many buckets as
that's the big that's a huge factor right there.
Yeah. So I like the Lakers got better in the offseason, in my opinion. Losing Dorian Finney-Smith is interesting just because he was Luka's buddy, and through addition by subtraction, whatever you want to call it, you lose Dorian Finney-Smith, you add these 3 players, so you've gotten deeper. How does that stack up in the rest of the Western Conference? I guess that's a question I'd like lob back to you. How do you feel about this team stacking up against the rest of the West?
Yeah, it's a great question, because a lot of those Western Conference teams have definitely gotten better, right? Like Houston Rockets added Kevin Durant, for example, alongside with, Dorian Finney-Smith and all the other. They have probably the most number of wings I've ever seen on a team to just throw it. Like any type of wing scorer you are, you could like go to the Rockets and just throw like a wing player in terms of defense.
Yeah.
I'm just like, so I guess the big question that I have, and I think we'll see that answer pretty quickly, is that LeBron, Reeves, and Luka didn't have enough time to gel. It's just like, if you look at any team in the history of the NBA that makes any trade at the deadline, it's either, I guess maybe, and this was kind of pre-deadline, but like, you never see a team make a trade and then be able to win a chip. Like, it's just so hard, unless it's like a role player, and then that kind of works out for you.
Mm-hmm.
You need that training camp and then that cohesion. I felt like watching from the Lakers fan perspective, I never saw all three kind of click at the right time.
Yeah.
And there would be flashes, but then it was never like sustained, like over the course of like, 8, 10, 15 games. It's like someone was like working back through something. And obviously Luka was like a big question mark. Like, he had that calf strain. And as we know, like watching the playoffs, like this calf strain is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So, credit to him to take that time off. But like, obviously he needed that time to get ready. So I'm really looking forward to, JJ going into year 2. The coaching staff is there's a familiarity there. And then as well as the players kind of coming back and going through training camp
Mm-hmm.
and then really building off of what they went through last year. So, and then, I mean, it's like it's an old story, but old narrative. But like when you have like a top 3 player on your team, that already kind of puts you in a good betting odds. And then I'd go off and venture, like, I don't want to sound like a Lakers homer, but like LeBron may be a pretty good number 2. Like if you like look at other number 2s in the league, and I'd probably lob this up to you as well, but like, how many like as good as options are there in terms of the number 2 option outside of LeBron? Maybe J-Dub, like he played fantastically with OKC, but there's like, LeBron makes that list, I guess, is my kind of question.
No, he absolutely does. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dude, when you're coming off an all NBA season, like you
6th MVP. Yeah.
Like you got to get mentioned in this conversation. Now, obviously, like every year you're going to go in with the whole, well, how does he look coming in? Because it's not a guarantee anymore for him. But I agree with you. I also think, like, to your point, Austin Reeves was exceptional to finish the year. Struggled in that playoff series, right? And he admitted that. I remember seeing a quote saying like, "Hey, that was on me. I did not have a good series. Should have been better."
Yeah.
Believe he was also banged up. I can't remember exactly what the injury was, but he said that he was going through, I think it was
like a foot sprain or toe, something with the foot or toe.
Something along the lines of that. But like, you could tell he wasn't 100% in that series, because right before then he was masterful, like playing some of the best basketball of his career. And I think like what people expected Austin Reeves was going to be the year before, when he was coming off the Olympic run. That's what they got last season. And he was a big part of why they won 50 games. So I expect for him to be just as dynamite next year. I also think like he will be able to alleviate some of the ball handling pressure from a LeBron James. And truthfully, if you're going to have that high usage guy like a Luka Dončić, he's going to assume 30, 32, whatever percentage of usage anyways. Having Austin Reeves as an off-ball release valve for their offense is going to be very, very intriguing, because he's one of the best guys at attacking closeouts, settling for those floaters, kind of getting into that area, making plays. Obviously, the three-point shooting is massive. He stands to really benefit from Luka for a full season too. And to your point, like the machinations, finding out what groups work together, that's not something you can do on the go, right? You have to have
so hard.
A training camp. You got to have a summer to figure things out. Like you said, for Darko Rajakovic, I'm sure JJ Redick is kind of like in there with like the ESPN commercial, coffee and everything.
Basketball psychos.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to cook something up. So to me, it's more about like having that time, or affording yourself the luxury of time of figuring out what you can do. And that's the biggest benefit for this Lakers team, because when you have those 2 guys, when you have, actually, I would say those 3 guys, you have a puncher's chance against anybody. But a puncher's chance is not the same as they are title contenders.
Yeah.
Same line as, OKC and Houston and whatnot, right?
Yeah. And I always like to point out too is that, like, you make this deal like 10 times out of 10. Like, if you have a chance to get Luka, you do it. But we did trade away 2 starters for a Luka Dončić, and obviously Luka is as great as he is, but it's at the time, and if you look at the roster, like, we didn't have enough depth to kind of fit those gaps that were present at the time. So like you said, like, that was always natural to be the case. So I want to kind of take a quick detour from Los Angeles. I want to head up north, and I want to talk about our old friend Brandon Ingram. And I feel like, from a Lakers perspective, I'm really excited to see Ingram, finally hoop and get off the shackles of the curse that there is in New Orleans, and, like, step in the right direction. And I'd like to see him shine because he has like a ton of skill, and I was watching your basketball breakdown video on him about all the skills he brings from, just his pick and roll pop, his mid-range assassin. Like, he's kind of like a mini Kevin Durant almost, like, in terms of his ability, in terms of offense. But my question to you is, and I'm sure, you and a bunch of Raptors fans are wondering, but, like, what's the direction the team is trying to head into? Because if you look at the starters, you have a ton of experience, a ton of veterans, and a ton of options there. But then you also have a lot of interesting rookies like Jacoby Walter, Sheed, Mogbo, and then can't forget about Grady Dick. I know he didn't play in the summer league, but there's just so many options. But, like, it's like, where are we going with this ship?
Yeah. Dude, it's honestly also really interesting to get your perspective, like, from an outside perspective, like I imagine it is from a Lakers side for you. Because I'm always curious to see what the temperature check is for other people for the Raptors, but I'm very bullish on this Raptors team heading into next year. Long term, that's a different story. The long-term questions and financial implications of having a pretty expensive roster moving forward, what that means for the rest of the guys. They're really hoping that they win on the margins over the next couple of seasons. So, like you said, some of those younger players becoming winning and impactful players sooner rather than later, and being those guys on their rookie scale contracts. I'm thinking of Colin Murray Boyles, who they just drafted 9th overall.
Yeah.
Grady Dick, Jacoby Walter, maybe Mobo or Shed popping away. And, like, those are the 2 guys, that entire list that I just mentioned. They're hoping one or two of those guys pop in a real way on their rookie scale contracts, so they can have that level of flexibility while still having the top end talent that they have. In terms of long term, the question really comes down to what they believe Scottie Barnes is moving forward, how much he's able to progress after a down season that he had, and how the pieces around him work. Emmanuel quickly had a wildly injured season. Brandon Ingram obviously has had a pretty injury-riddled career, truthfully. And RJ Barrett is sort of this player who's still figuring out who he is. Still weirdly young, like, how old do you think RJ Barrett is? It feels like RJ Barrett's been in the league for a really long time, but
is it like 24?
He is 24 years old. Yeah.
Okay.
It
does feel like he's been in there for a while.
Yeah. So like, he has like a vet in terms of experience. He's obviously has veteran experience, but at the same time, he's still trying to figure out exactly what kind of player he can be. And so you have this group that talent-wise should be able to compete in a lackluster Eastern Conference.
Definitely.
They're hoping that some of their depth will push them over the edge. And I mean, I've said this online, but I think their like winning total right now is 37.5. I'm very happy.
Hit the over.
I'm hitting the over on that because I just think they are not only poised to try and win games, but they have a ton of pressure around them to be competitive because this season is a proof of concept for everything. It's like they are expensive. They know that they're expensive. The ownership group knows that they're expensive. The front office knows that they're expensive. They need to know that what they're investing in is something that's worthwhile long term. And if you go into this season, given all the external factors, and they're not competitive, then you have much, different questions for this team long term compared to a team that might be competitive, might be able to win some games next year. Yeah,
I definitely see if to me, like from an outsider's perspective, I kind of get the vibes of like a 2 timeline thing, but it also kind of makes sense to ask and go through these questions and try to get a bunch of answers through the 82 game season. I'm curious to know, before I kind of jump in and give all my thoughts, and like, what is your understanding of like the starting lineup? Because Ingram coming in, to me, would make sense, where RJ would have the opportunity to kind of lead a second unit to kind of give Ingram, because there's only one ball, right? And I feel like for RJ to be effective, he needs the ball. And not to single him out, but I think, there needs to be also a little bit more spacing. If Ingram's there, IQ's there, who's that, I guess, that fifth starter for you, in your opinion?
So it's Jakob, it's Scottie, it's Brandon Ingram, it's RJ, and IQ. And I think that's what they start out with, just because those are the guys who get paid the most,
Sure.
And
that happens so often, right?
They're going to get an opportunity to figure that thing out. Now, halfway through the season, if it's not working with that starting group, or, 20, 30 games into the season, and if it's not working for that starting group, they have a plethora of options. Grady Dick is obviously the guy who can space the floor. Jacoby Walter was a guy who finished his rookie year shooting 40% from three. Ochai Agbaji is a guy who honestly proved to be a rotation player in the NBA last year for them. Shot 40% from three, was solid defender. We'll see if he gets extended. That's kind of a question that's looming right now for the Raptors. He is extension eligible. But those are the three guys that, from a conventional fit perspective, probably make more sense than RJ Barrett in the starting lineup. And to your point, like, I can see RJ feasting against transitional units. I actually just literally 2 hours before our conversation released a video on RJ Barrett. And my whole premise, it is good timing. And my whole premise was just that I think there's so much more to what he can do off the ball, especially in Darko Rajakovic's offensive system. He's actually been implored to cut more than he ever has in his career. So he's moving without the ball more often. And he was really successful at doing that. These like weak side dribble handoff actions that they have, where he's kind of just like, he's able to get the ball and barrel to the basket. It's the best way for him to maximize his skill set off of the ball. And over the last 100 games that he's played for the Raptors, he's shot 37%, 40% on catch and shoot threes, which is actually a pretty healthy diet. If he's able to do that consistently, you're looking at a guy that will fit into the starting lineup. Obviously, there's a lot of ifs. The other if is like, hopefully BI can stay healthy, man. Like, when he's healthy, he's clearly an all-star level player. If he can stay healthy again, I think he has a pretty good opportunity to do that in Toronto. It's just a matter of, being available. And I think that's what, you talked about the Pelicans curse and whatnot. I think a lot of Raptors are hoping that it is actually the Pelicans curse.
Yeah.
And, you get a guy who might be a little bit more healthy than he has been throughout his career.
Yeah, I think the one thing that definitely excites me for the Raptors, like if I'm just looking at it from like the big picture, is that like the defense is going to be there. You have so many options, like,
for sure,
from the defensive end to just be consistent and stay within games. And like you said, like the lackluster East is you're gonna be able to kind of go through the offensive lumps, like while you're kind of figuring out like what rotations make sense. And you made such a good point with RJ, where I kind of see a similarity to earlier in the pod when we were talking about Austin Reeves. Like, I think he'll be able to feed off of all the attention on Scottie Barnes and Ingram, and just those pick and rolls, like that side action where he can just attack closeouts. Because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think like he definitely improved in his efficiency at the rim last season. So that's also promising. And then I didn't even know about how like above average he shot from threes in terms of catch and shoot. So there's definitely, an opportunity for him to start. Like, obviously from an outsider's perspective, I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but like, I think he'll get a chance. He'll get a shot, definitely. And it can work. Right. And if it doesn't, like Darko, like you said, has so many options. And you mentioned some guy that, I've said in a few other pods where, if I'm the Lakers, I'm kind of interested in making some calls at Agbaji, because like he's a type of player where I see
it does make sense. Yeah.
Like he's kind of like, I kind of put him in that same mold as like, okay, he's like a PJ Washington type like player in the sense that like he's in a situation where like he like his ceiling isn't kind of untapped because of his like where he is sitting in terms of the pecking order. And he's not making much, but I'm sure the Raptors love him. And it would be tough to get him, but that would be a player that I would love to put like alongside Luka and all these other guys. But
Yeah,
I think it's an exciting. Go ahead.
I'll just say he is 5 inches shorter than PJ Washington, probably a little bit more shorter than PJ. He's more of like a 6'4", 6'5" on a good day, and PJ Washington is like a 6'9", 6'8", something on a good day, which makes a sizable difference on the wings. You know what I mean? Like
fair.
I could for what it's worth, Ochai does do a decent job of guarding up in position. He's similar to Marcus Smart in that realm where like he's sturdy and stout, so he can do it. But in terms of like positional, functional size, Ochai doesn't necessarily have that as much. I will say he makes a ton of sense next to Luka Dončić. And the comparison I would make is Josh Green from the Dallas Mavericks when he was on the Dallas Mavericks. He's kind of like similar, has had moments where he shot the ball well. Honestly, truthfully, I didn't get a chance to watch him a ton in Charlotte last season. But from what I can see is like he's a very good 3-and-D player. A little bit undersized compared to what you would want typically for a 3-and-D guy. Royce O'Neal is another guy that kind of pops out to mind, similar concept. But those guys know how to play up in size just because they're so sturdy. And so Ochai does something similar to that. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that, but I interrupted.
No, I let me clarify too. It's just I think it was more of a kind of like diamond in the rough type of situation where
like
comparing.
I got you.
Finding because like okay, Lakers always like this is I'll vent a little bit. Lakers always get linked to like big name players like a Wiggins type guy. So it's like thinking like outside the box and like a move that kind of moves it within the margins. And I think like in terms of what Agbaji makes, and you could probably throw in some like sweeteners in there to kind of make it work in the sense that like okay, the Raptors do have other players, like you said, like you just drafted Boyle and these other players that do need minutes and time, and you never know. And that's someone who I think could be on the move. I don't know. We'll see. Like as
he very well
season
could be,
goes
man.
on.
Yeah, look, like the Raptors are above the luxury tax right now by a couple $1 million, and so they don't necessarily need to do that. Kind of adjust that tomorrow, but they have until this time next year or a little bit earlier, probably like end of June, to be able to sort it out and get under the luxury tax. Ochai kind of is one of those guys that people are wondering if they end up trading just because he is also extension eligible, or, there's other options out there, but just something to keep in mind, especially when it comes to the Lakers targets and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. So let's dive a little bit more deeper into Raptors basketball and the players that we were just discussing. So in your view, in your perspective, how do you see and how do you envision just like the offense being played in terms of like, is it more traditional in the sense that, okay, IQ is the point guard, and I know Darko kind of runs a more of like a movement type of offense, but Ingram's like, obviously like, you did it in your breakdown, but he's like, prototypical like alpha isolation type scorer type of play. Like give me the rock and 8 times out of 10 he creates a really good look because he's just like 6'10", freakishly long, and he's got the length and he makes every shot look good.
Yeah, the offense is going to be really interesting. I agree to your earlier point about this team probably being really good defensively. I think they're going to hang their hat on trying to be a top 10 defense. The offense will probably be a work in progress, and what they struggled with last season was creating shots, and now they have a guy who can create shots in a pinch. And to me, it's like the degree of difficulty of the shots Brandon Ingram takes, that's probably what the degree of difficulty will be in Toronto, just because it's not a spacing issue so much that they just don't have guys who can beat you off the dribble as much. RJ Barrett was probably the best at doing that last season. You know what I mean? Emmanuel Quickley is not a guy who, despite his name being quickly isn't like a guy who's going to burst to the basket consistently, and he's not necessarily good at finishing at the basket either. Scottie Barnes is still trying to figure out what he is, but he's also not a burst to the basket guy. He's trying to muscle his way into the rim. He's trying to muscle his way to the basket, and actually leaning into that is probably the next evolution for him. Jakob Poeltl, obviously not a floor spacer, but a guy in the short roll who can work and operate. And so you kind of like offensively, they need a lot of motion because the roster requires a lot of motion to create openings. I think of the Sacramento Kings during the Beam Team era, where it's a lot of dribble handoffs, a lot of movement off a ball, working to create angles and driving lanes in a little bit more unique ways. A lot of people will think about the Golden State Warriors when you bring up that team. The Warriors obviously do it with an immense amount of spacing. Conceptually, that's the type of basketball that they want to play, but they're playing it with a very different roster. And it kind of makes me think of the Denver Nuggets, because the Nuggets, not for a lack of better words, like the Raptors look at Jokic in a way that the Raptors look at Scottie Barnes similar to how the Nuggets look at Jokic, not from a talent perspective. I'm going to jump in and say not from a talent perspective, but just from a perspective that like this is a big forward who can make plays out of the post. And if he can put pressure on defenses with his scoring, which is the next evolution, then he'll be able to seek double teams and make plays that way. Brandon Ingram is a much needed release valve for them offensively. And so I think this team goes as far as he goes offensively and how successful he'll be, because the rest of the group, I think a lot of it will have to rely on that movement that I mentioned and finding those small crevices, small openings on the offensive end to be successful.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think like you said, most of these games can be rock fights, and when you need that scoring in a pinch, Ingram's like a great answer to have, like against most opponents. Like he can go and create that offense, like you said. One thing that was interesting coming into last season, I know IQ missed a lot of time, and there was some of that. But what was by your estimation, why Scottie struggled so much last season? Was it I don't know if there was like a roster change out or anything, but just curious your thoughts there.
Well, it's two-part. He started out his season battling a bunch of weird injuries. He got hit in the eye by Jokic, and so he missed a bunch of time. And then when he came back, he had an ankle injury, and then he missed a bunch of time for that. And then by the time he came back, they were sort of in tank mode anyways. And so they're like, hey, Scottie, we're giving you 28% usage on every night. Just go and experiment and see what kind of player you want to be. And that was like, he ended up playing 65 games because he tried to meet the All-NBA requirement. Unfortunately, did not have an All-NBA type of season. But he started his year fairly injured, and so I don't think it got off to the right start. That said, I think part of it was also them giving him a ton of usage and seeing what he makes of it. And truthfully, like he struggled. Like he was one of the least efficient scorers out of like high usage, high shot attempt guys in the NBA from basically all categories, from 2-point attempts, from 3-point attempts, at the basket. I think a lot of that was because the Raptors just didn't have anybody else to go to. And that's where Ingram will help out. Having Scottie be more of an off-ball guy and working as a screener, working as a guy in the dunker spot, working as a guy who can honestly, truthfully attack like secondary defenders, because BI is going to take the harder matchup. I think that will help him offensively. Just playing next to better talent will help him. So to me, I think they gave him a ton of opportunity last season to see how much he can kind of grab it and take it. He wasn't ready for that yet. I don't think so. Maybe he will be in the future. I think there's maybe a world in which he does develop that. Ball handling is a big question. Shot making in terms of 3-point shooting is a big question moving forward for him. But generally, I think just playing with more talent will help him as he tries to develop his own offensive game too.
That makes a ton of sense. I guess I want to continue to talk about that and dive a bit deeper. What do you see in terms of, just because you watch him a ton, what's his ceiling? And if you can think of like a comp of what, like, because defensively, I don't have any questions or like concerns. Like he's like all world in terms of defense. Like I think he can guard any position. And like mobility, length, like everything is there, and he has the motor. So like there's no questions from my end, like in terms of like when I watch him play basketball on the defensive end. In terms of offense, like do we like, and you can even kind of take it like archetype wise. Is he like a play finisher, slasher? And you kind of just pointed to like he struggled like being that creator. But just curious your thoughts there.
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I don't necessarily have like a specific comp for you. I've seen people bring up the Aaron Gordon comp, but Aaron Gordon was such a wild athlete in his
Yeah.
heyday, and he's
Yeah.
just a different type of player compared to what Scottie is. I've seen people bring up like Sabonis and Draymond Green and Bam Adebayo as comps, and I would say, I think defensively, I kind of see what the vision is with Bam and Scottie, and what that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like smaller bigs who can do a little bit of everything, switch out. Obviously block shots, deter at the basket. Scottie is longer. At least it feels like Scottie is longer. To be honest with you, I could be wrong on that, but they're both like they can guard multiple positions, and that's what provides them that versatility. Offensively, though, I think there is so much room and ambiguity to what Scottie will still be in his career. And a lot of that is based on his choices offensively and what he wants to grow. He really leaned into like fadeaway post jump shots last year. And I'm not necessarily sure that's the diet for him to be like a successful, efficient offensive player. He needs to be a guy who uses his physicality to get to the free throw line, be a good free throw shooter, be a guy who can basically barrel his way to the basket with his length and his strength, because that's one thing that's incredible about him. He is so strong for his position that I think he can just outpower some people, and hunting mismatches, working and being able to basically find mismatches earlier in the shot clock. Those are the ways that Scottie is going to evolve. I don't necessarily have a comp for that right now, truthfully.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a comp out there that I can think of that's like matches what I'm looking at. Truthfully, I guess the comp would be like Pascal, because Pascal Siakam did that, but Pascal didn't do it with strength. He did it with speed and agility, and he found a way to just become a mid-range assassin. That was later in his career. He kind of evolved into a mid-range guy, but early on in his career, he was very much so an off-ball player, and eventually started to branch out and do other things with the ball. But that's sort of the vision I guess I could see with Scottie is just like that pathway, if that makes sense.
Is he used as a screener a ton?
Yes, sometimes. When Emmanuel Quickley was back in the lineup, he did do it more often. But just because IQ was hurt so much throughout the year, we didn't see it a ton. That's one aspect that I think Scottie needs to actually get better at is working to screen better. And honestly, screening is a gift. Like I'm sure you saw it watching guys play off Luka. It's like, man, it would be great if Jackson Hayes could nail a screen right now. You know what I mean? So
contact. Yeah, I mean, because I can just imagine him being like a supercharged Draymond Green, like in the short roll, or just like take 2 steps and then like Giannis, you're at the rim, like you're dunking, or like you're creating a free throws, or you're collapsing the defense, and then the read is so easy. Like you have Agbaji or someone in the corner, or even in the dunker spot. So like I'm it's gonna be really curious. Like it's gonna be interesting how the season plays out, because we talked about it in the beginning of the show. There's gonna be pressure to win. So like roles are gonna be kind of defined. Like it's not gonna be abstract, like in terms of like what Ingram does, what Barnes does. So it's gonna be like, okay, this is what works, and this is kind of like the winning formula. And maybe there's some like derivatives of it, but like it's like, okay, IQ is kind of like the table setter, Ingram's like the closer, and like if there's like 12 seconds left in the shot clock, you give it to Ingram and clear out. And outside of that, like I think it'll be interesting to see how offense is kind of built around like Scottie for him and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really intrigued too. There's just going to be a ton of movement, and that's where I think the Raptors can thrive. I mean, they're going to live in transition a lot just because of their defense, and they have a lot of good transition players. Scottie, RJ, BI, they're all very good transition players. IQ for his part can be a good pull-up shooter, pull-up threat in transition too. So I know there's a world in which they can muster up a decent offensive rating just by getting out in transition a lot. But that's taxing. Like that's tiring. That's a tiring brand of basketball to play. And you need to be deep to be able to play that way. We've just seen like the Oklahoma City Thunder do it. The Indiana Pacers do it. Like that's sort of the mold that they want to lean in, is like defense turning into offense. I think the league is trending that way. But they just need to have the personnel to do it. So that's, again, leaning on some of the young guys to be more than what they are right now.
Let's talk about quickly, sorry, we're staying so long on the Raptors because I'm just so interested about him.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit more of the youth and the core there in terms of the rookies and the sophomores and Grady Dick. I felt like had a really good first season. What's your temperature there in terms of like the youth, the youthful Raptors?
Yeah, it's really interesting. They are. I mean, they've injected a lot of youth over the last couple of years. They've sold off a lot of first round picks, but somehow found a way to get a lot of young guys into the system. Between Jamal Shead, Jacoby Walter, Jonathan Mobo, Colin Murray Boyles that they have, Grady Dick. I would probably throw Ochai Agbaji in this group as well. Jamison Battle, a guy who was the second best shooter in his rookie class last season. These are guys who just they have NBA skills and specific NBA skills. Like Jamison Battle is a good shooter. Jacoby Walter and Jonathan Mobo are good defenders. Jamal Shead is a solid ball handler. We'll probably get some backup point guard reps this season. They have NBA skills. It's just about, can they add the rest of those things that are required to sustain and be like a rotation player in the NBA? I would say Ochai has done that. I think Grady Dick has done that to a certain extent. Now, there are some defensive concerns of how he's able to stay on the floor because he's such a talented offensive player. And when he puts it together on that end, it's pretty clear that he's the starting guard of the future. But it's just how sustainable is it for him to be on the floor defensively. And I think they have a lot of intriguing defenders on their bench, which can be kind of useful if you're thinking of a team that's trying to force turnovers constantly. I'm really high on Colin Murray Boyles to be a positive defender, and it's hard to be a positive defender out the gate as a rookie, but just his size and his length and athleticism, I think he will be a positive defender. They've had a couple of guys over the last couple of years in Mobo and Jacoby Walter be positive defenders out the gate. I think Colin Murray Boyles is the guy that they're hoping, again, wins on the margin. It's finding that financial flexibility within some of your young guys, and we'll see what happens this season with it, man.
Awesome. Last question here, and I want to bring up one of my buddies. He wanted to ask what's your temperature check on RJ Barrett's long-term future on the Raptors? We kind of talked about RJ earlier. Yeah. But if the Lakers came to you, pretend you're the GM, with Dalton Connect, expiring salary, and the 2031 first, would he or Toronto consider that?
I think Toronto would consider that. Yeah. The reason I say that is because it just, again, if you're thinking about luxury tax situations and if they're trying to cut money, and I also think that's probably something you look at the deadline, because
for sure,
we'll see how it is with RJ in general. Again, it would be awesome for the hometown kid to stay in Toronto. That would be a cool storyline, and have him be a part of the next version of whatever playoff team this is. But that said, they are pressing up. They are above the luxury tax. And so getting that expiring salary, getting Connect, who's a younger guy who you might be able to, turn into something, and a pretty valuable first round pick, I guess, if it's unprotected. Yeah, I think that would make sense in terms of a deal. I think that'd be sensible. That said, are those type of deals out there for RJ Barrett now? And I don't mean that to diss or disrespect RJ Barrett at all. It's more about the climate of the NBA and the market that we're seeing for a lot of these guys. Like Marcus Smart got bought out. He was on an expiring salary. Deandre Ayton, he's a $30 million player, got bought out instead of getting traded. It's hard to trade for sizable salary now. And so RJ Barrett is a guy who's making $27 million this year coming up, and another $28 million or $30 million the year after that. It's hard to trade that now because teams don't want to take on contracts. And so I'm curious to see if that value is even out there for RJ, just because of the climate of the NBA right now.
That's such a good point. I mean, with this new CBA, everything is out of whack. We just went through a free agency off cycle, which was so teams are fighting over MLE players, but then outside of that, there's so many of these guys that are just getting bought out because there's just no market. And it's young players too. I mean, say what you want to say about Ayton, but he's only think 24, just turned 25. And, you can make the case that he's like one of the 15 best centers in the NBA. In terms of skill, you could even probably rank him higher. But awesome. Love your thoughts there. Let's take a quick segue from there and talk about the offseason. And we can kind of make this fun here. What would you rank as the best offseason move by any team? This
there's a couple of different ways to go about this. There's honestly a couple of transactions that jump out to me initially. The number one has to be the Atlanta Hawks trading for the Pelicans unprotected first round pick just to move down 10 spots in the NBA draft.
That was insane.
It just, to me, that was laughable. Like, I'm sure the Hawks got that phone call and they're like, they did actually. There's reported, my guy Shamit Dua reported this, that the Pelicans, Hawks literally had to call them multiple times and be like, are you sure this is the pick you are offering us? And so when something like that happens, that is the most absurd offseason move that I've seen. I still can't rationalize it. I'm sure there are places in Pelicans Twitter and Pelicans fan bases that are trying to rationalize, okay, well, this team can be good, this team can be competitive or whatnot. I don't necessarily see it in the Western Conference. That's probably the best move of the offseason for the Atlanta Hawks, is getting that just gem of a first round pick, who, by the way, it could be nothing. It could just be like the 9th, 10th pick in the NBA draft next year, but you just gave that away to move up 10 spots. And I don't know, that to me seems like very, very bad decision making by the Pelicans, and pretty valuable decision making from the Hawks.
Yeah, and it would be one thing, and I'm sure you probably did a deeper dive in the draft talent, because your pick was like right around that area. I think where you were 9, they were 10, right? That was the 10th pick that they. So I didn't.
It was the 13th pick. It was the 13th
pick. Okay,
right. Yeah.
Wait, did they have the 10th pick and they took Fears? Is that what it was?
They had I want to say the 7th pick and they took Fears, and then they took Queen with 13. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sure, if you were to make that trade, you're trying to get into like the cream of the crop type of picks. Like, you're trying to get like a VJ Edgecombe or someone within that top 4, top 5. But like to trade your unprotected first to make a pick in the 13th pick is like, you have to make sure that pick hits.
Yeah,
like there's no other.
And dude, honestly, even if Derek Queen does hit and he becomes an all-star, it's the value on surface, like the surface value just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? That to me is laughable. What is your favorite or number one move of the offseason?
The number one move, to be honest, I think was Cam Johnson going to Denver.
Nice.
The Nuggets. I just feel like, they were, so it was really smart in the sense that, okay. You were able to reduce your salary and increase flexibility in this offseason cycle, which, if we talk about the other moves they made, they were also complementary to that. But I just think that Cam Johnson is going to be such a good fit on a Nuggets team. Jokic is still best in the world. And it's just, and Michael Porter was successful. He won a chip. I want to give him credit for that. But I just think that Cam just like makes the right decisions like all the time, like on both ends of the ball. And there's injury concerns for sure, but there was injury concerns with Porter as well. But like now you have a player that kind of makes sense, like in terms of dollar amount and value, whereas Michael Porter was at such a balloon value that you kind of had to pay him at the time because you drafted him. Right. You won the chip. You kind of keep everyone together. I just think that they're going to be so good next year, and they were already they took all these they really impressed me in the playoffs, to be honest. And they always do. And you're talking to a Lakers fan who's kind of has had nightmares of Jokic hitting backwards ass shots from 3 and whatnot, at the end of the buzzer. But I think they're just going to be so good. So that was probably my top move in terms of this offseason.
Yeah, I like it, man. That's a good one. What else are we doing?
Oh, so the next question I had is, and you kind of answered it in the first one, but we can probably take it another way. It's what's a move that was just what were you thinking in terms of this trade or this signing.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't make sense. Like in terms, it could be either like, roster wise or like where they're at in terms of the direction of the team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's the easy answer is definitely the one I just gave, which is the Pelicans one. But I guess if I had to kind of reach into my mind and see what they were doing, the Colin Sexton Yusuf Nurkic trade, I for the life of me do not understand that. I mean, like
that's a good pull.
I get it from a Utah needs to give their young guards opportunities, and so they had to trade Colin Sexton to give those young guards opportunities. Walter Clayton going to get opportunity, Ace Bailey going to get opportunity, Keontae George going to get more opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. Jordan Clarkson now gone too, so those young guys will definitely play a lot. That said, like you actually had to pay to get off Colin Sexton and trade Yusuf Nurkic. I was
shocked. Yeah.
Flummoxed by that. Like that's just,
yeah.
I'm shocked just because, like, again, this goes kind of back to what I was saying about RJ Barrett, where it's like good players are getting traded for peanuts. You know what I mean? And I do think Colin Sexton is a pretty good player. Like he's not like a guy who I'm going to bat for like a first round pick or something, but it's surprising to me that they had to pay to get off of him. That's just puzzling to say the least. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll give you two. I think one, I don't know if it kind of fits in this bucket, but I'm just so tired of the stories. Is the whole Jonathan Kuminga situation with the Warriors?
True.
I feel like they've kind of over-indexed and like that relationship is kind of clear, like in terms of it's sour at the point where it looks like most likely he's going to take the qualifying offer, which is a big middle finger to the Warriors and the front office, because by taking that, I think it's like $7.6 million. He can't be traded next year, and then he's a unrestricted free agent. And now you let go of a player who, like you said, I mean, I think he's a good player. He has a lot of talent, a lot of skill, and I'm sure in the open market he'll be able to command a ton of money. But it's just a situation that you could have probably got ahead of it in terms of. And the Warriors are kind of like known for this, like they're always in this win now mode, and they did try that 2 timeline thing, which by the way never works unless like you're the Spurs and you kind of luck out in terms of the players that you draft.
Getting Kawhi Leonard, yeah, definitely,
yeah, right. So I'd say that one is one of them, and then I had another one. Now I forgot about it. But what are your thoughts on the whole Jonathan Kuminga situation?
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. It is kind of tiresome. Again, it's the whole restricted free agency thing, and part of it is there's not a lot of money out there right now. I mean, Brooklyn is still a team that has cap space, but there's not a whole ton of teams that have the money that these restricted free agents want to go out and get. And so you're seeing guys be squeezed a little bit to get their market value versus getting overpaid. And you see that with Josh Giddey, you see that with Jonathan Kuminga, you see that with Cam Thomas, you see that with Quentin Grimes. I'm sure these situations will get resolved, but it's the dog days of the offseason for a reason. And we get the Kuminga saga, which is not necessarily exciting. I remember Sham said it was going to be a big offseason. I guess not,
Yeah, I guess not. Let's do a quick rapid fire and then we'll get you out of here.
Okay.
Again, right. Appreciate you coming in here. I guess our real quick and early predictions of how the awards finish off next season. So,
oh wow, okay, all right,
real early. So we'll get your answers in
sure
in verbally here. MVP.
You know what? Let's do the Luka Revenge Tour. Let's do Luka Revenge Tour MVP. How about you?
I'm sure everyone will love that. How about
we're on a Lakers podcast? I got
you. Yeah. Why not? How about Rookie of the Year?
I'm just going to go ahead and say Cooper Flag is going to win Rookie of the Year. Yeah. Seems like an easy pick. Yeah.
That's an easy one. Okay. Who do you have winning it all next year?
Oh, man. That's going to be very interesting because I think OKC is the exact same team that they were last year, but the rest of the West has gotten better. How much J-Dub and Chet take a step? I think there's a chance they repeat. I think they're probably one of the best positioned teams of recent years to repeat. But I've said that about the Boston Celtics. I said that about the Denver Nuggets, and those teams did not end up repeating. So we'll see. Really hard to win back-to-back championships in the NBA. Maybe they just have the talent requisite to do it and the depth. I don't see any other team that makes me want to trump them, though. I don't feel confident being like Houston's going to be the one that, or Denver's going to be the one. I still think it's OKC. So I'm taking OKC because they just still feel like the favorites to me.
That's fair. I think the only thing I'd push back on is that, like you said, like there hasn't been a team that has repeated, and it's just that long season you go through. Now, the one thing that works in OKC's favor, which everything you just mentioned, is they can go and make any trade that they want tomorrow. Like if they want to add a player that fits a hole or whatnot, they could go make that trade tomorrow. And then
I'm surprised they didn't trade for Cam Johnson. Like that was one guy that kind of made sense for them. But
yeah. Okay. How about 6th man of the year?
Oh, that's such a
think about that one.
Yeah, that one's a strange award. That one's just like who ends up playing not as many minutes. You know what? Maybe one of those Philly guys, because they have a lot of guards. And Maxey is going to start. We'll see if VJ Edgecombe starts or doesn't start. Jared McCain might start or not start. They obviously we'll see if Quentin Grimes stays on that team, but it seems likely that he'll stay on that team. Maybe he gets some 6th man of the year buzz. I'm thinking maybe one of those guys, not Maxey, but maybe one of the other guys.
That's a good one.
I don't know. I just, again, that was the first thing that came
It's definitely an obscure one. It's definitely a tough one. All right. And then we'll finish it off with this one. How about DPOY?
It's Victor Wembanyama's award to lose. If he plays 65 games, he will win Defensive Player of the Year. If he doesn't play 65 games, it'll be Chet Holmgren who wins Defensive Player of the Year. That's my pick.
What about Scottie? Can we give some love to Scottie Barnes?
Defensive Player of the Year? That would be awesome. I'd love to cover that season. That's special. I think Scottie would be is pretty good lock for all defense eventually in his career. Yeah. We'll see. It's hard for wings to get DPOY nods. We saw it with Dyson Daniels last year where it's like, dude, he had an incredible, steals and deflection type season, but just not enough to get the voters to convince themselves to pick him over someone else, over Evan Mobley, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think his pathway to winning it is Toronto, just completely flipping the script in their regular season, and him just I think the best version of the Raptors, and I could be wrong, I don't know, the best version of the Raptors is him just like being this pterodactyl on defense and just shutting shit down, to be honest with you. And then the rest of the other guys like Quickly, Ingram, there's enough offensive firepower for the Raptors to just stay at bay, and then him just focus let me go 100%, 150% on defense, and then I'll get my scoring here and there off transition, off putbacks, just like this high motor guy. Maybe kind of take a page out of 80s kind of playbook. That may be the pathway. And it would also, they would have to win some games, obviously, to kind of make it work. But that would be really cool to see. Now, I'd be really happy for you to cover that type of season.
Yeah, it would be cool, man. It would be really cool. I think he has that in his bag. I think he could possibly do that. It's just, going out and doing it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, S, I am so, I was so stoked to have you on the show today, and I'm so pumped that we were able to work this out. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Thank you first and foremost for having me. Appreciate you. It was a lot of fun to do it. A little bit of August podcasting. Very fun to do. Yeah, man, you guys can follow me at just Es Baraheni on Twitter, basically on every social media platform. Appreciate you having me on as always, man. Thank you. I guess absolutely. First time. Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
First time. Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Peace.